Greetings from the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. You're watching the broadcast about how to ensure operation of the local communities in quarantine conditions. I'm Olga Mishchenko. This event is organized by USAID and supported by it, also by ICMA Europe and the Polish Foundation for the Development of Local Democracy and Swedish-Ukrainian project ICMA International. Our discussion will bring together Ukrainian local self-governments from Europe and from the Northern America. And we will discuss the issues raised by COVID-19 pandemic everywhere in the world. During the next 2 hours, local self-government managers will share their vision of the communities functioning under quarantine conditions. They will share their experience how to maintain distance communication and management. We will discuss also economic outcomes for local communities because of the coronavirus pandemic. And you can see our stream on the UCMC website. You can also ask your questions online and also watch us on Facebook. Let us discuss situation in Ukraine. On March 19, the government had introduced preventive quarantine throughout the entire territory of the country, and following this decision, local self-government started to implement this decision and introduce preventive measures like closure of schools, limited public gatherings, limited operation of public catering institutions, entertainment centers, etc., public transport. The first case of COVID-19 was registered in Ukraine on March 10, and since that time we have 145 cases, 5 deaths, and 1 patient is recovered. Later on, the government introduced the emergency situation regime all over the country and had extended the period of the situation until April 24. Now we have Olexander Korinniy, Association ATC President and of Novoukrainska Amalgamated Territorial Community. So please share your experience, how you implemented the government.
Доброго дня всім колегам. Дякую за можливість сьогодні поспілкуватися з вами. І хоч сьогодні спілкування нам бракує, спілкування, контакту з людьми.
With the colleagues, of course, we all lack personal contacts during this special period, but nevertheless, we believe that this will prevent us from the peak.
Ми маємо зробити в першу чергу все, щоб не зробити різкого скачку захворювань, тому що та система
in infection people. We understand that in our regional hospitals, in the ambulances, we didn't have sufficient resources to tackle very hard epidemical situation. That is our major task, is to prevent the outsplash of infections patients, and we have to analyze those who are in the risk group. Besides aged people who are quite often mentioned as a risky group, we understand that also doctors and medical workers are in the risky group. Actually, they are at the upfront of the situation. They have to be protected, and we expect that infected doctors will be the biggest problem. That's why we produced as many masks as possible and transported them, delivered them to all the medical institutions in our local community. Jointly with volunteers, we have established special places for observation and isolation of future infections patients. And we are lucky that by now we do not have registered cases yet, but yesterday we received special tests and we expect the statistics to grow. Also, we try to provide a sufficient number of masks and gloves and means of protection to those who serve people who stay at home, those who people with different disabilities, etc. And special our focus is on those who provide these services. Also, we try to cover with our attention those people who are partially disabled, who can stay home, but we have to provide them with all necessary food and medicines. Then we focus attention at public places like bus stops, like food stores, like pharmacies, where we have some small crowds of people, and on the other side we try to forecast the budget losses, future budget losses. We review our budget these days. We understand that the budget, that revenues will be much smaller, and we have to predict the loss in revenues and cut down unnecessary costs. Then, if we speak about tax vacations, we should look carefully at for whom we provide these tax vacations. For example, food stores, pharmacies, they have drastically increased their incomes these days, unlike the accessory stores or apprentice stores, which almost, or restaurants which almost stop their businesses. When we think about logistics in the city, we see problems here. Also, we have established stabilization funds for our local community enterprises, and we will partially pay for this infrastructure, like electricity supply, like water supply, because in Kiev it was announced that the utility bills will be either delayed or allowed not to be paid, and we immediately found out that people are not going to pay. Then my question, why we allow some businesses not to pay social tax, etc., but we still impose 20% VAT on our communal, on our municipal enterprises. Our agrarian businesses these days are volunteering and contributing too much to the medical sphere. For example, they started to provide necessary beds, equipment, or donate money for procurement of necessary medical goods and equipment for local healthcare institutions, including the special equipment for coronavirus epidemic. And in this situation, also we should not forget about single parents, such category of socially vulnerable people, or the victims of home violence. They have to remain with their offenders in one house. The next issue is observation for those people who arrive from abroad, and we have to observe them. I would suggest to limit a possibility for people to get together in evening time. In small local communities, people tend to get together in the evenings. That's why we suggest to establish a hotline for single people, for pensioners, for victims of home violence, where people could call and explain their problems. We also have established a special disinfection service line in our city. Then we have established special contacts and contracts with food suppliers to local food stores and asked businesses not to raise prices, and even some food store businessmen, they even cut down prices for people in these days of increased demand for food, when people try to make some food stock at home. Also, another good measure was to organize the teachers from kindergartens who have to stay at home to produce medical masks. Thank you, Olexander, for your information. I believe that jointly with other leaders of communities, we will discuss even further all those ideas that you offered today. Stay with us, and probably you will hear something interesting for you. Okay, and now let us listen to our foreign colleagues who also find themselves under restrictive measures against pandemic. And I suggest you to listen to a comment of Peter Ag, Executive Director of ICMA. He is speaking from Slovakia.
Hi, my name is Peter Ag. I'm the Managing Director for ICMA Europe. reporting for Slovakia from Bratislava, Slovakia. The first case in our country, in Slovakia, was on March 6. This virus has spread much slower in Slovakia than maybe in other countries. It's because our country was one of the first to give it a real pushback. Just 4 days after the first case in our country, all schools were closed. This was a decision made by local governments, by mayors, and the government as well. Basically, 1 day later, on the 5th day after the first case was found, Slovakia shut all its borders for non-Slovaks. That means only our nationals could come back home, and we cannot go out from our country. Or people that are living and working in a distance of less than 30 kilometers from the border, those can travel to work. That's pretty much it. Also, all 3 of our airports for personal travel were closed, and all trains and buses stopped transiting out of the country. The only transfer is for the goods, which, of course, all the trains and the airports are working in, so we can have all of our goods coming into our country. All the rest of the people were asked to stay home, and not unless you really have to travel to work, just basically being at home, since all of our children are at home and school is not running ever since March 10. On the March 19th, last Friday, we actually had a government change. We had our parliamentary elections here just a few weeks ago. So the new government came in place last Friday, which many people were afraid what will happen during the change, when the old government was handling the coronavirus outbreak in Slovakia in the first couple weeks. And now it's a totally different government with different people, but I think the handover was really well made. Actually, the pictures of our president and the new government setting in place were in worldwide news, because everybody is wearing a mask, basically 24/7 if they are not inside of their home. Today is day 18 of the outbreak in Slovakia. We have about 4,000 people tested. Out of those 4,000 people tested, were 204 positive. We don't have any deaths, and we have 7 recoveries at the moment, as of today. For local governments in our country, of course, they closed all schools that we are running. That's the kindergartens, elementary schools, secondary educational schools, and universities as well. All public spaces, such as parks and playgrounds, were closed. People are advised, if they go outside of their home, to keep at least 2 meters away from anybody that is also out of their home. And of course, wearing a mask and wearing protective gloves is an everyday routine now. All services of local governments are done by email or mail. Basically, electronic communication came really fast. Some city halls remain open for maybe a couple hours a week, allowing people to enter just one by one. So there is absolutely no people in multiple numbers inside of a room. This happens in front of the stores as well. When people are lining up, they stay at least 2 meters away from each other. Some special services that we are providing at the city halls, such as weddings, there's a maximum of 4 people per wedding, and unfortunately with funerals it's the same. Actually, all of our country is encouraging people to call police whenever you see more people gathering at one place. All the shops and shopping malls were closed. and are closed now for the second week. Only groceries, pharmacies, and drugstores are open in a limited time period. One big mistake that we have done in our country is just after we closed all the schools, so all the kids were going to stay home. Many of our people went for holiday resorts, such as wellness centers or ski resorts. So that took another 2 to 3 days to shut all of these places down, or people were in large numbers. So this is as much as I can say about the country of Slovakia at the moment. I do hope all of you will stay safe, and we will meet in person at our next conference, wherever it might be, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ag, for detailed comment about situation in Slovakia. It was very interesting moment about closure of entertainment centers and children's playgrounds, because preventive quarantine allows to stop the speed of the spread of the virus. Now from Slovakia, let us come closer to Poland. We have established contact with Mr. Krzysztof Stanowski, International Affairs Department Director of the City of Lublin. Could you please inform us about the situation with the coronavirus spread in Lublin, or what were the first 10 decisions to combat coronavirus and to protect people? You should understand that Poland is approximately 2 weeks ahead of Ukraine. We have more than 1,000 of registered cases, 15 cases of casualties in our province. We have 200 of cases and 2 casualties. There are 3 spheres of responsibilities for local powers these days. First of all, to introduce national government decision. The second is to support groups of vulnerable people. And the third sphere of responsibility is to ensure safety for those who have to function in this period. First of all, Mayor every day on Facebook holds meetings and coordinates work. The second is to restrict access to the municipal offices and much business is done via internet or by telephone, and our major task is to ensure fundamental services for our residents and for temporary migrants, for guests of our city. Our major task was to ensure provision of local municipal services, like, for example, the social security registration number for those who keep arriving to the city. The third, the schools, of course, are closed, but they try to function in remote mode and to ensure distance learning. As far as I understand, in Ukraine, you are still striving to organize this the worst thing is to see kids who are wandering around the city. They immediately become those who disseminate the virus. Then we have closed entertainment centers like playgrounds, etc. This allowed us to prevent the gatherings, and we do not allow people to gather together in a number bigger than 2 people. Only if people live together. Mother or 4 kids.
Fundamental issue. Municipal companies, the colleague from associations of the amalgamated communities told it about the transport. First, this is protection of drivers. And in trolleys, in buses, there should be zones where passengers are not allowed. And also limitations of the number of people in the transport, and also disinfection of transport. Also important issue is provision with water. And it is important to have good purification of water, and the quality of water should be checked. These people should be healthy. They should remain on their positions. This is fundamentally important. The next point of responsibility of the city head is collection of wastes from those people who are in quarantine. They cannot take away their waste themselves. And also we may need thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds in villages. And now we have 5,000 people in quarantine, and there will be 10 times more people soon in quarantine in our voivodstva. And these are student camps and other facilities, and this is fundamentally important to provide for people. And also we start to think about providing for people at the front line. Schools and kindergartens are closed, but what happens with the children of doctors and nurses? We should provide help with children for them, because they go to work and they face a lot of problems. Next, questions of business. How we will need to change the budget. What should we do in order not to ruin the long-term budget? Because now we see that the restaurants, museums, many institutions do not work at all, and we should think how to build the solidarity. And lastly, I would like to say the solidarity and support of the vulnerable groups. Sick people, elderly people, foreigners, people who are in difficult conditions, homeless people, not only in New York, in Lublin we have such people, and we should think about them. Also migrants. I'm sure that we will be able to overcome. But the lesson from Poland is that we should provide proper response and to stop contact between people. Otherwise, it would be much more difficult. We are ready to help, share our experience. And there is a note of the president and the mayor of Lublin. We are ready to help Lublin. We have 40 brought the cities, and we wish everyone good health. We have online question. When in Poland there will be the peak of epidemic? Maybe it will grow 10 times. Do you have some forecasts from your institutions and from the health ministry? Honestly saying, we believe that the peak will be in 3 months in Lublin. We cancelled all public events until end of May. End of May, yeah. This is a real period of time. We do not plan any other things, only fighting coronavirus. It's clear, thank you. Stay with us. Maybe there will be some questions to you. And we got all your materials, all your written recommendations, and we will be glad to share them in our summary material that we will prepare after this presentation. All will have opportunity to get these recommendations from Lublin city. Thank you. Stay in touch. Goodbye. We will show one more video that was sent for us from US. Manager of Carson City, California State, Sharon Landers, and she will share the situation with endemic in US and about her city and what measures were implemented.
Hi, I'm Sharon Landers. I'm the city manager of Carson, California. Carson is in Southern California, near the ports of Long Beach and LA, about 20 minutes south of the city of LA. We've been dealing with the coronavirus onslaught now for probably about 3 weeks, just in terms of preparation. The city of Carson acted very quickly, actually just before the governor of California, to declare our own city health emergency. We used that as an opportunity to close down City Hall. To the public, we closed down our park facilities, our playgrounds. We stopped allowing the public to come to our council meetings and required that they watch via our web or cable. We've been doing that now for the last few weeks. We consider our staff to be part of a large circle, and we knew that we would have to start shrinking the circle and having fewer and fewer staff at our office to protect our staff, to make sure we can have social spacing 6 feet from each other, but also to get as many people to shelter at home as possible. So we started by reducing those that volunteered based on their age or underlying health conditions, or the need to be home with their children because their kids were now home from school. Then we started looking at who is essential and not essential. Essential included public safety, infrastructure maintenance, public serving, like our planning and buildings department that are involved in providing permits, our business license department, and then the last was internal, like HR, payroll, those types of folks. Those that are non-essential, of course, we still love them, but we're just using that terminology. They are being sent home. They're being asked to apply for unemployment because the governor is allowing that as a way of their getting compensated. That will only pay for 60 or so % of their total salary. So the city will allow them to make the rest by using their accrued leave time. For those workers that are essential, we are continuing to work in the office, but in the near term, probably later this week, we'll start allowing people to start telecommuting. We don't have a telecommuting policy yet. We'll be putting one in place. We'll be allowing them to use the laptops that we have or software that we're getting that they could use on their home computers. Just to give you an idea of scale, we have about 260 full-time workers. about 20% of those are non-essential. We have about 600 part-time workers. About 90% of those are non-essential. That's because the bulk of those are Parks and Rec staff. And as soon as we terminated our events, classes, programs, functions, they don't have work. So one of the initiatives that I put in place was to create a task force of people who could work with seniors that are in need. So we've provided our number publicly, and we have about 15 people currently staffing that. Seniors can call in, and we can connect them with services or with food. We would actually drive food to them. We have the YMCA making food in our city kitchen, and we'll have our staff deliver. So those are amongst the things that we're doing. We're also beefing up our public communication. We've been using our web and social media, but I'm putting together a team of people as well to make sure that we have as robust community communication as possible. That's just to give you a little bit of an idea on what we're doing here in Carson, California. And good luck to everybody. Again, Sharon Landers, Carson, California. Bye now, signing out.
I would like to announce that in the framework of DOBRE program, Ukraine Crisis Media Center starts on a series of online conferences for practical implementation. And we have the Director of Public Health of the Ministry, Vladimir Kuropita. Our first online conference will take place next Tuesday, and it will be dedicated to the topic who and what should be communicated to the community. And follow us through Facebook and join us. So, Mayor of Latvia, Yanis Vilnitis. Do you hear us? Do you hear us? Good afternoon. I see you clearly. Do you mind if I speak Ukrainian, or should I continue in Russian? Please tell us, please share your experience, how you efficiently communicate with your community, and explain your actions concerning your measures to fight coronavirus. Thank you. I would like to share our experience. So we have 3 weeks of emergency situation. The law was adopted first. The approach was mild, and then we decided to be rigid concerning the measures that we will be implementing in the town. First, gatherings of more than 200 people were prohibited, then 50 people, then to 2. And we decided at once that we will close concert halls, theaters, museums, libraries. We closed all sports arenas, tennis hall, and other similar premises. And we see that this was done correctly because Liepa has 2 borders, one sea border, then land border with Lithuania. All passengers who travel to Liepa from the side of the sea in the port, we take coronavirus tests, we check temperature, then we accompanied them from the city. We have responsibilities only in our city, and it was important for us that those people They should not be in our city. They should not go to our shops. And from the side of the Lithuania, our citizens came and from Latvia and Lithuania, and they were accompanied from Latvia through Liepa to the side of the Riga, to the side of Riga. They were accompanied in order not to allow people to stay in the city. Also, you know that schools were closed. Children study individually. Out of 24 kindergartens, only 4 are working. Each district we have them. Children attend kindergartens. 3,700. We have children, and only 70 children now attend out of 3,700. So these 4 basic kindergartens are enough. Why they are needed? We have families where both parents are working in hospital or in police or in factories. Our factories continue their work. It is important to have less impact on the economy because the economy suffers because of reduction of tourism. We closed all playgrounds in order not to gather children there. So this is a place where children and their mothers, they like to go there, but we prevented it in order to stop spread of the virus. Also, we closed sport halls, even private ones, because we cannot be sure whether they observe social distancing and whether they provide proper disinfection. We need to have 2 meters between people. We should have proper disinfection of hands and the surfaces where the infection may be. About buses and trams. Separately, we had an opportunity to buy tickets from the drivers. Now that we cannot buy tickets from drivers. They are shielded, they wear masks. We do not have sufficient amount of masks, not only here, but also in Europe and in the world. In Liepa, we have textile industry enterprises, and they started to produce more masks. They are not certified. We cannot certify them that fast, but these masks, these are good masks. In many situations you may use them. You cannot use them only in hospitals. So this is briefly about the main measures. I may tell you that each day we have new ideas. We understand what we should do better. If you look back, I would recommend to be more strict, to work more with those people who traveled from abroad. What I would do differently 2 weeks ago, for example. Once an airplane arrived, or a train or a ship arrived, you should not allow people to go home. Schools, they are empty, halls and sports facilities are empty, and you should find opportunity to provide 14 days quarantine. They should live in those premises together, and it would be easier for the doctors to monitor the health of those people, and if everything is okay, in 14 days, they would be allowed to go to the city, to their families. That would be important to do this. This should be done. This should have been done at once. Thank you for sharing. Do you have confirmed cases of coronavirus? How do you follow them? Do you isolate those people for observation in some premises you've mentioned? In Latvia, we have about 200 coronavirus patients. Liepa, we have in our city we have only 3 people. First, the patient was found last week, and these patients, they have mild form of coronavirus, and 2 of them that are discharged from hospital. We brought them home in order not to have contact. They should not go to the shop. And what is the reaction of people? Do they observe the quarantine? Do they observe this rule of staying home and not to go to the street or to the shop? What measures are provided? People accept this positively. There are some people. Everywhere we have such people. Even if you find some people, and because of these people, we have 1 week of police raids. We have municipal police of the city together with the state police. They carry out raids. They check homes of those people who are on quarantine, whether they check whether they stay home or they go around the city. We check this. This provides results. Everyone knows about this, and everyone understands that there will be checks. And the second thing we do, we also go to shops, and we see whether there is social distancing to have 2 meters between people. This provides results to those people. And some people believe that they are young and healthy and they will avoid this infection, but everyone can get ill. Thank you for sharing your experience. Stay with us, and we continue. Thank you.
We continue discussion, and we try to dial Mr. Shafranovych. I would like to remind you that we had Mr. Yanis Vilnitis from Liepaja, Latvia. He reminded you that Liepaja is a transit city for many people who can either bring coronavirus or get coronavirus there. And he shared their vision and their experience. Now I can see Mr. Roman Shafranovych. My question to you, what is the situation with the Ivanivska amalgamated local community?
Досить серйозні виклики перед нами зараз стоять. Ще 2 місяці назад ми навіть не могли собі уявити. Ми жили звичайним життям в нашій громаді, планували, і в один момент і всі плани в нас просто почали відбуватися. Але менше з тим, завдання місцевої влади Завдання громад зараз мінімізувати наслідки тої кризи, наслідки можливої кризи і провести всі необхідні заходи, які ми можемо.
Minimize the future outcomes of this crisis. We are rather small rural community, and we believe that self-isolation may do much in this situation. And actually, many members of our local community are on self-isolation because they arrived from abroad. We have 6 or 7 people who had already finished their period of self-isolation, and now they can communicate with other people. We continuously explain to people what does the self-isolation mean and how they have to organize it properly. Those people who arrive from abroad, from Italy, from Spain, they have to self-isolate. Now, those people who continue to arrive home from abroad, they have to inform their family doctors when they are still abroad, when they are on the way home, and immediately after arrival, they are under observation. Thus, even those people who arrive home with higher temperature after 3-4 days in self-isolation, they normalize and they find out that it was just not a coronavirus but ordinary disease. One of the questions which arrived online, the question to you, how you organize delivery of pension payments to those who are on self-isolation. A big part of our residents, they get pensions on bank cards. Those who are not able to use plastic bank cards, they either ask their relatives or they submit special requests and we deliver money to them, but this is done by messengers who have to wear masks, gloves, some protective clothes. Actually, these are minimal contacts once a month, and we hope that this is not that dangerous. What is the situation in your villages with the food stuff, with primary needs stuff like medicines, etc., food stuff? We do not have any problems with the foodstuff supplies, and we do not expect to have them because all food stores function properly and all the suppliers have a possibility to deliver them. Even we have observed some decrease in demand because after the first days of panic, we experience quite stable situation. The biggest problem was with sales of seeds because people are preparing to plant something in the spring months, and yesterday the government provided explanation and now this problem is resolved. The next problem was with delivery of masks for those people who have to wear them, and These are our municipal servants and local medical workers. We have 2 ambulance clinics, and we managed to provide the staff with proper number of masks, clothes, gloves, etc. Everything which uniform. I believe that we have resolved this issue successfully. The next issue was with the commuting of local health workers because all the public transport is stopped, and we had to organize delivery of this, or bringing of this medical staff to the ambulances. And of course, we have closed all the children's playgrounds and kindergartens. In the first days of coronavirus crisis, we announced a charity action and managed to raise enough money for purchase of necessary medical equipment for artificial breathing and ventilation of lungs and heart condition. My next question: how do you ensure protection for the for vulnerable groups and maintenance of vulnerable groups of population? Traditionally, we cooperate with the social security system, and by now we had no problems, but we have to be prepared, and we are thinking on this issue. Thank you, Ruslan, and stay with us, and in case we have further questions to you. Unfortunately, we have some problems with communication, with establishing connection, and by now I would like to switch to Mr. Vadim Rauch, manager from Český Krumlov, and he will describe how they work with the problem.
Hi, what's up, guys? My name is Radim Rouche, and I am a city manager, or the city manager of the city of Český Krumlov. It is a World Heritage City, so our industry is tourism. So you can imagine how deeply struck we were by this coronavirus epidemic that started to spread in the whole world. It's a blow for our economy. It's a blow for our restaurants, for our hotels, for all the small shops that provide for tourists that flow to our town or used to flow to our town 2 or 3 months ago. Now, the streets of our historic town are almost empty, and so are the shops and all the businesses. We as a city are trying to give a helping hand to our local businesses, so we are postponing the payments for rents, but we think that may not be enough, and if the situation gets worse, which supposedly it will, we'll have to provide more. So everything is open for debate now. Our country, just as all the countries around us, have lack of protective gear like gloves, masks, disinfections. Not even the medical person have enough for them. So there's a beautiful reaction of the people. They are started to make cloth masks. My wife made me 3. Almost everybody is making cloth masks for themselves, for their family, for their neighbors, for total strangers. They don't care. They just are trying to help everyone around them. Funny thing, the government decided to use the illegal confiscated spirit and to give the spirit to the pharmacies to make disinfections. So even the moonshiners helped a little bit in effect. People are forced to stay home. They can't work. They can't socialize. So it's hard for their psychology. On the other hand, maybe this is a good time to develop new approaches to things like working from home, making online conferences, not going for a short talk hundreds of miles away. You can just phone the other person or Skype them or anything you like, and people are discovering these options. So maybe it will be one of the benefits of this terrible situation. Our schools are educating kids online or trying to. It is really hard to make kids study at home. I have three. My wife is at home with them, so she's really exhausted. But we're trying our best. We're doing our best. There are special channels for kids and for the elderly popped up. Just to educate them and keep them busy, not thinking bad thoughts and stuff like that. Our city started a huge campaign online and in the real world. It's called "We're Gonna Make It," and we are trying to communicate a positive emotion to the people to cheer them up, because there really isn't much you can do about this, but to try to keep people in a good mood and courageous. We started providing grocery shopping service for the elderly, so they don't have to go to the malls and supermarkets, and just to keep them away from the danger. Almost all the restaurants in the town started making delivery services, because you are not allowed to go to a restaurant. Restaurants are closed, and they are trying to survive, so they are delivering their food, which is great, by the way. This is a really difficult time for all of us, and it really is a time where the true qualities of the leaders show, and when the competence of the leaders show, and it also reveals the lack of these qualities. So this is a trying time, and I wish you all good luck. Stay safe, be healthy, be strong, because your communities need you, and this is the reason they pay us. So be safe, and goodbye from the Czech Republic.
Thank you, Mr. Rauch. I would like to remind you it was Mayor of Mr. Český Krumlov in Czech Republic. I liked very much his statement that besides systemic communication, you have to maintain courage, you have to maintain good mood among people. In the meantime, I would like to mention that Ukrainian Crisis Media Center had developed this infographics for local self-governments, 10 steps to be made in the coronavirus pandemic. It is based on the ICMA materials and the Canadian Healthcare Organization. You may download this infographics from the link below. Information about our video conference. That's why now we would like to dial up our partner, Miss Larissa Mudrak, who will add a couple of words how efficiently communicate in this time of troubles. What is algorithm of successful communication with local authorities during crisis times? I would like to welcome. I'm happy to welcome you. I would like to thank you for organization of this press conference. I believe that this is a good challenge from the communication point of view. This times of challenges is a good chance to test the communication competencies and possibilities. We have heard from many local community leaders about situation in their communities. On behalf of myself, I would like to emphasize the role of local community leader, how he can play his leading role in a crisis situation. The crisis is an opportunity to test how we may exist in virtual space. We will need to exist in virtual world for some time, and everybody tries now to test how to exist in online mode. I like the Sir Winston Churchill phrase that troubles means chances, not just problems. And now I see three principles: systemic approach, timelessness, and positive attitude, like three components, how we can tackle the current situation. I am happy that many local community leaders in Latvia, in Northern America, in Ukraine, they act similarly, and they apply similar approach, because the crisis will pass by, while care for people, care for the safety of people and the well-being of people remains the main aspect for local authorities. I would like to discuss how local leaders systemically communicate with their local communities, how they maintain this continuous communication contact. For example, it is very important to transfer the main message of central government, of the president, to local communities. How many registered cases we have, what happens to the local medical workers, how many treated patients we have, how we tackle the problem of Ukrainians arriving from abroad, how do we deal with observation, etc. This practical approach, positive attitude would allow people to remain cheerful. This is quite new situation for us, and local leaders should remain leaders for their communities and show new ways and new approaches to surrounding people. Of course, communication or communication chain requires the emergency list or emergency checklist. Currently, we observe the rise of topical communication fora. For example, people who deal with children's education, they get united in a special online forum. Those who deal with services to elderly people, they are united in another online services. of course, businesses, small and medium size, they have been suffering, they're almost dying. That's why you should involve local communities to all your decisions. You have to act as leaders. This, my appeal is to all local community leaders. Try to appear online in virtual space every day, because people need your advice how to behave, what to do. This is the principle which is extremely important to describe faithfully the situation, to describe openly, and to raise trust among people. Your ethical position is also very important. Your faithfulness, your openness are able to raise trust. You should be absolutely sure in good mood, express optimism, and inspire them. Do not forget that you have to monitor the situation in the regions and inform people. And I encourage you to communicate with local communities as much as possible. Another important principle for local leaders. One day the quarantine period will be over, and you have to be prepared ahead to this day. You have to understand, you have to imagine how this turn will happen, how smoothly, how gradually you will finish the quarantine. We do not know whether quarantine will finish in summer or in autumn, but you should be prepared. You should have a plan, you should have steps how to revive normal, how to resume normal life. And the last, please remember that you have to say negative things to people, but not try to do this in a long way, and try to express as much optimism as possible. And thank you very much. We have a question to you from Olena Vinogradova. She has been asking how to support people, and on the one hand, on the other hand, to force them to stay in self-isolation. That is how to combine that positive attitude and negative things. The personal example is the biggest convincing thing. When I see a mayor in a mask in a line to the food store, this convinces me the most. Then the next issue is to spread information about security measures as often as possible. It finally works. So continue to insist on the use of masks, of gloves, of distances, etc. So the leaders have to show example. Larissa, thank you very much. Thank you for your inspiration. Remain with us. I would like to mention, dear guests that you may share with us example of proactive communication, and you can provide us with these bright examples. We will spread them and encourage people to follow these good examples. We can see Bajkovetska local community. It's good to see you in masks at a good distance between each other. Please introduce.
Good afternoon. I'm Mykola Duma, Deputy Head of the Korinniy Amalgamated Community. Also, we have the Deputy, Viktor Volodymyrovich, and the Head of the Headquarters of Civil Defense, Vera Mykolaevna Sosulska. If you followed our broadcasting, you heard that our previous speakers spoke about local business. Local business helps local government to bring some funds to buy some equipment and products. At the same time, business suffers because of these limitations. What about cooperation with business, and how do you support your businessmen? Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to say that, thank God, we did not record any cases of the virus. We communicate with business together with the regional authorities. We created a stabilization fund, and special accounts were created together with the regional budget. We have some accumulations. We have some money in the budget. Financing is going on. We provide fully the life of our community, but we have some concerns about the budget, reverse subsidy, and each day 600,000 hryvnias are written off our accounts, and this hits our budget really hard. This is a big problem, and my colleagues raised this issue concerning budgets, and we will have problem for 2 months. We have communication with business. Each day we communicate with them. It was a pleasure for us. We spoke with our big association. We have a powerful plant that produces equipment, systems for the cars. Now they discharged all people for quarantine, but they provide 2/3 of their salary for them. At the moment, we will have proceeds to the budget, then we will have some problems. We also will speak with Angela Bocci, and she prepared a research how the quarantine influences local budgets. I would like to ask you about mobilization of people, about volunteer initiatives to help the most vulnerable groups of population. Please tell us about your experience. I would like to say that we've introduced remote work. We have a center for provision of services to population. they monitor the people whom they serve, and they provide basic products for them. Also, we have an NGO that organizes volunteer groups that bring food products and medical products to those who need it, not only to vulnerable people, but to all those who need it. Because a lot of people came from abroad. We have 11,000 of population, and 42 people came from abroad during last week. Those people self-isolate, and they should be provided with everything they need in order them not to leave home. We try to isolate them in such a way, and our territorial center and NGO, they help them. I would like to thank Larissa Mudrak for your wonderful advice. I know that she is a great specialist in communications. We thank you for your advice. We will use it. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we will continue our press conference. Please follow us. Now we will discuss the topic of telecommunication work and how to establish it in the communities, within the bodies of local power, in the committee of local government, and in other bodies of local governance. And we would like to speak with Katerina Borisenko, Social Boost organization. This is a part of DOBRE program. Do we have connection? We are waiting for the call. Katerina, good afternoon. I hear you. Now we see you. Good afternoon. How to establish proper telecommunication and what instruments can be of use. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I hope that you see my presentation on the screen. Dear colleagues, do you see my screen? We may go back to the previous mode. We have presentation on the screen. So, Social Boost, we are IT partners of DOBRE program, and we are speaking about the instruments that can help you to work in conditions of distributed groups and telecommunication. So this is our office, our home office. This is when we wake up in the morning, we need to establish communication. We use Viber, some chats. Also, I advise to use task planners. And these are the system work section. For example, this is Ukrainian product that allows you in the groups to establish tasks and to control their implementation. In this way, you will better understand what your colleagues do, what your team does. This can be work section and other systems that are used by project managers. Asana also is good. This is Ukrainian product. We use work section for control of payments within the organization. We know that if we ordered some payment, we need to know how it goes remotely without leaving our home. Also, applications of, we propose it within the DOBRE program. And if you do not use it, you may also use application of electronic address. This is an application that allows the residents to submit their proposals, their requests electronically to the site. You may get registered in 2 clicks. This reduces the load on the services, on local government bodies when we are trying to get to the village councils, for example, and using this application will help you. There is simple registration, and it is easy to work with this application, and processing and answer is really easy. And also consultations we implemented this year when we discuss normative acts. People are able to comment and respond to the projects of drafts of the normative documents, and there is no need to have these discussions in person. And I know that assemblies now are banned. You may do it all online if your community is active. If there are users of the internet, they may go to the site, they may get registered and use online services. I understand that in spring, budget participation is active, and the DOBRE program participants, they used participatory budget instruments, and due to the quarantine, some measures are postponed, and we may do it all electronically. We prepare instructions that will help you to submit your projects online. If you use our system, you may work with electronic documents and avoid the social contacts. There are electronic services that allow from one side to have the dialogue with the community, to communicate with people, to have trust with people, and from the other side to avoid social contacts in person. Other services. I would like to remind to you some of these services that are good for remote work. Google Disk to Google Documents Shift. I know that many work with documents on paper, and then they create electronic documents, but you may work with electronic documents instead. For example, the site of joint access. You may work with these documents jointly. You may introduce changes. You may watch this version of the document. You may introduce and work with the documents jointly and in parallel. Also, Google Calendar to synchronize your meetings online, and you should plan the meetings if you have a lot of them. You may plan for yourself, for other participants, and also send notifications online. You will be able to have the calendar of all your meetings online. Local government bodies, they work now, but maybe they will go online fully in the nearest future. Also, the system CHASNA, the system of electronic document processing. So this is the interface of CHASNA system for electronic processing of documents. You see the documents, for example, I sign the documents with my electronic signature. If the document needs 2 signatures, I get a notification that my document is signed by my counterpart, and only with some cities we have documents on paper. Now we work with the majority of the cities only through electronic means. So please, you may be interested in this service. You find your counter agents, you send documents for signature through the service. Also Zoom service. This is the analog of Skype. These are video conferences. It is more sustainable than Skype. Better connection is provided. It is for free for 20 participants. And Skype is not able to sustain such a load. So you may be interested in this service. Also, I would like to say about electronic state registry office. For example, if you would like to submit for divorce, if both spouses have electronic signature, then the office may process the documents at once, and you will be able to use these online opportunities. We have more online opportunities than we think, and I wish you to study these new instruments that will simplify your life in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for these practical recommendations, and I would like to remind to our viewers that you will be able to watch these videos online to see this information once again, and we will have this information on the YouTube channel of UCMC and on our page of Dobre program. Thank you very much, Katerina. We would like to speak directly with the participants of Association of Local Governance, and we are going to speak with the expert of the Association of Municipalities of Sweden, Magnus Lilleström.
We can hear you well.
Okay, good.
Okay, perfect. So could you give us a brief overview of what is happening right now in Sweden with the coronavirus outbreak?
Yes, I will. Here in Sweden, we have a situation with about 25,000 persons tested, and with 2,500 confirmed infected persons. And further, we have around 50 people that have died from the COVID-19 disease.
Please continue.
And we know now that the number of people infected in Sweden have outnumbered the number of people that have been infected in other countries and come back to Sweden. We had a large group coming from Italy, where they had been skiing and came back with infected. The national strategy for confronting this is to accept that we have a spread in Sweden. This is much larger than 2,500 because we are only testing specific groups. We are not testing widely. We are testing those in risk groups, and we are testing staff working in healthcare, in elder care, and in other positions where they are in contact with the risk groups. Obviously, this influenza is to some extent similar with the ordinary influenza we have, but it's different in two ways. We have no immunity in the population, and we have no vaccine. And this is the background of the strategy, because just as other influenzas, this group hits hard on the risk groups. People of age with other medical complications. We know that all the people that have died so far from COVID-19 have been in the risk groups and have had underlying medical issues. So the strategy at national level is to press down the peak of the infection so that it will not be higher, the number of people that need care will not be higher than the capacity of the health system, especially the capacity of the intensive care wards, and at the same time increase the capacity of these wards. This has a really big implications for the local self-governments and for regional self-governments, municipalities and regions. They play a very important part in Swedish life and especially in providing welfare in Sweden. Regions are responsible for health care and public transportation. Municipalities are responsible for elder care, care of the disabled, school, both primary and secondary school, and the child daycare, which involves more than 90% of the children in Sweden. Part of that, things like rescue services, ambulance, and all the other things that need to be at hand: water, sewerage, solid waste management. And the idea is, of course, to make sure that the medicine against this coronavirus will not do more damage than the virus itself. So there's a need to maintain these services, to be able to continue to give health care, elder care to need without spreading further the infection to vulnerable groups. For municipalities and for health care, of course, to make sure that people working there could come to work and will come to work without being infected is of extreme importance.
So maybe you could just...
Unless many other countries, we have not been closing the primary schools or child daycare centers because we know that then parents would have to stay home and many people working in important functions would not be able to fulfill their tasks. As I'm working for the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, it might be important to say something about the role of such an association. Actually, the most important thing that was done at an early stage and is continued to be done is to bring the situation of the local and regional authorities to the national level, to the government, to state agencies, and then advocating for changes in regulations, legislations, recommendations, so that the possibility for municipalities to handle the situation is increased. One thing that was done early was to temporarily change the system for sick leave insurance. Now, people that stay at home for being sick or having symptoms will not lose money for the first day, which they would otherwise, thereby preventing the people that feel sick go to work, not to have an economic damage. And same way to not having a demand for a medical certificate for being sick after the 7th day of sickness. We don't want to bring sick people into healthcare during an epidemic. But also other aspects important for the local and regional authorities have been lifted, and the response of the government and the agencies, state agencies, have been also responsive, so to say. But our association is also an employees association, So they have been playing an important role in clarifying for municipalities and regions how they should act as employers in relation to their staff. And have also entered into agreements with trade unions on specific regulations during this period, which will make it easier to prevent spread of the disease and deal with the situation. Then the third role is, of course, the support to the members to provide information, not information that's different from the recommendations from national agencies, but information that is more into what this means for the local and regional level. To provide areas for communication between municipalities, that was done rapidly, and there are now several online facilities for municipalities to share experiences, to ask for how others have done things. Also providing direct services, of course, in many different ways. During the weekend, actually, in cooperation with companies and with others, we set up a website trying to collect all the available tools for online education, for distance educations, making it available for the teachers. Because the secondary education and the secondary and university education is now done at distance, whereas the primary education is still done in schools. In municipalities, it's extremely important to prevent the spread of the virus in the services. Special care has to be done in the elder care. And still at the same time being able to maintain these services that are crucial for the elderly, for the disabled. And they have been using all available methods and ideas to make this possible. They have invited recently retired staff to come back to work. They have tried to reorganize activities. The regions responsible for healthcare, they have closed down their dental wards for other than emergencies, and then used protective gear that was in those departments in the intensive wards instead, and also using staff for dental care in medical care. At the local level, we see a need to relay information to groups that have been difficult to reach by the national level information communication. And we see also that we have in groups that are not so good at Swedish, or are living in more marginalized parts of society, we have a larger spread of the disease, and therefore it's very important for municipalities to continue their efforts to spread the information on how to handle the situation. Also, as has been mentioned by Ukrainian colleagues, the importance of supporting the local companies is evident. This is a hard blow for many small companies. First of all, for their cash flow, and therefore municipalities are paying the invoices earlier, and they are giving respite for the companies to pay their invoices to municipalities, and in other ways trying to facilitate for the local companies to survive this. We're talking about restaurants, we're talking about shops, we're talking about many different sectors that is highly affected. So that is basically the situation. We know that this will continue for still some weeks. but the hope is that things could be coming back to normal before summer.
Yes, we do hope too that the situation will be ending soon. The spread will be stopped. Well, thank you, Mr. Lidestrom, for.
May I just say that
yes,
from my experience of working with the Association of Amalgamated Territorial Commanders and from meeting with the local politicians, I know that they are precisely as the local politicians working with all the courage.
Sorry, we lost.
Communities to overcome this situation.
Yes, thank you for sharing with us what are you doing within the how your association is working with the community of Sweden, and we Valentina Poltavets from the Association of Amalgamated Communities will be following you. So please stay with us within our live stream. But for now, we're very grateful for your comments and for joining in. Thank you. Власне, так, час нам перейти.
Now it's time for us to shift to our next speaker, to Ms. Valentina Poltavets, Executive Director of the Association of Amalgamated Territorial Communities. My question to Valentina: what is the biggest concern for local communities in these times of trouble? What are the biggest problems for them? And how you as association try to help them, and what are your top priorities in these difficult times? Hello, Valentina. What is the biggest concern for local self-government leaders, for the leaders of amalgamated territorial communities, members of your association? Good afternoon. I would like to speak today about local self-government and how it tries to cope with the challenges that we face today, and how our association could help to members of the amalgamated territorial communities to cope with this troubles. Today, actually, the local leaders work as crisis managers. They have to face crisis situations which keep rising in the local communities every day. Now, there are two the most important areas for local leaders. First of all, they have to implement those decisions which are made at the national level, and to ensure proper functioning of their local communities in the situation of protective quarantine. And while for national authorities, the biggest task is to ensure medical reform at the secondary level. For the local governments, the biggest issue is to create the crisis headquarters, the crisis team in the towns and villages. Many of our foreign colleagues, like Mr. Krzysztof, Mr. Magnus, they have mentioned today that the biggest issue is to ensure proper functioning of municipal services, utility services, heating, supplies, waste management, etc. So cleaning, disinfection, waste management, provision of sufficient transport means for commuting of the emergency personnel like medical workers, etc. Today we spoke very much about educational institutions. They have to turn to distance learning, but this is a big challenge for rural areas. Well, not all the students have computers, have a good internet connection. As an association, we try today to develop some recommendations to the national government about widespread of internet connection in rural areas. And the third big area is assistance to lonely people, to vulnerable groups, to elderly people. This is a big area for all the municipalities. And there is one very, very big problem related to this. This is financial provision for all those measures.
They hold sessions. Even they are not able to do it online, not everyone is able to connect. They hold sessions outside for 15 or 20 minutes to introduce changes to the budget and to provide first level of medicine or the secondary level of healthcare, for provision of masks, disinfection means, and other products. But there is lack of funds in the budget. There are no proceeds in these 2 months, and Association of Cities and Association of the Communities, we addressed the President, the Parliament, all the profile committees on budget, on taxes, to correct those changes, those legislative means provided by the state to support business, but all of them are done due to local budgets, and village councils now have some taxes, 50 or 70%. This goes from land tax, and during these 2 months they won't have any proceeds at all. And income tax, in some communities they have 50 or 70 or even 80% of proceeds to the budget from income tax, but now people are not working. They remain without work or they are discharged, and this is a threatening situation for the local budgets. And we addressed to the state power in order that this business that works now, they should be taxed. Land tax or property tax, it should be in place. Communal enterprises, they are working. They should also be exempt from taxes. They should be supported. Communal services, they won't be paid in full, and these enterprises won't be able to function properly. Also, we have proposals to the government to consider an opportunity to organize and to provide a subsidy or donation to counteract coronavirus, because communities, they have small budgets, they do not have reserves. and the state should take care of this in order to prevent economic collapse when communities do not have funds for paying salaries to budget workers or to provide double salaries during quarantine for doctors. We should hold dialogue with the state, with the government, with people's deputies, and to provide those measures. And we are searching for solutions now how to support business and to provide proper support for local budgets to function properly and to provide proper services to the residents of the communities. Different situations are in the big cities and small communities. There are only two sources of taxes. This is land tax and income tax. And now they cannot get these taxes. Association supports its members, and we are trying to be useful. We provide legal advice to communities. We organized a Google platform to provide consultations to our members. Also, we send recommendations from our colleagues from Poland, Sweden, Latvia, and we hand these recommendations over to our participants. Those decisions how to organize the work in emergency situations, we spread this information to share experience, to have this experience from the colleagues. So we do our work in the new conditions. We should support each other. This is really important. We should understand the problem and what help can be provided by the partners, by the members of association. And I would like to express my gratitude to DOBRE program for this conference. This conference helps us to assess where we are, what we do, and what we can share. I wish you good health and to overcome all those challenges that are ahead of us. There is an interesting question we would like to ask you. Sveta Yerещенко asked through Facebook whether there are some peculiarities, some differences, some mechanisms of introducing of emergency state to prevent the virus to spread, and about the financing of medical sphere. Are you ready better to respond? Whether the amalgamated communities are better prepared to respond? Amalgamated communities, they are responsible for primary level of healthcare. Also, they're responsible for education, and they provide proper response. And there is a commission on technological and emergency situations, and amalgamated communities created such communities, committees, and regional state administrations, they have commissions on technological and emergency situations, and they have a budget for the first and secondary level of healthcare. And non-amalgamated communities, they have less responsibilities. They get support from the regional administrations. One important aspect, I remember that there are some oblast state administrations that included the heads of the amalgamated territorial communities to their online sessions of the oblast commissions on technological and emergency situations, and the heads of the communities, they have a dialogue with the state, but there are many oblasts there where they do not have this. And the mayors of the big cities, they are more informed, and heads of the communities, they are less informed. We have some problems with communication. Thank you. We continue our work. Thank you for this detailed response. And we will have a comment from our speaker from abroad, from Simon Farbroser, former ICMA president, and at the moment he is Spruce Grove, Canada manager.
Hello there, my name is Simon Farbroser, and I'm the city manager for a community of Spruce Grove in Canada. I've had the pleasure to work with Peter R. over many years due to my past involvement with ICMA as the former president of ICMA and also as the former city manager of Edmonton. The last few weeks have obviously been very different for all of us as we have dealt with COVID-19. And Peter had asked me to share some observations and comments around things happening in Canada and the approach to the virus and the economic fallout associated with that. What I can tell you is that in many respects there's been a pretty rational response to the virus, and the reason for that is probably lessons learned from other communities and other countries around the world around restricting travel and having some fairly stringent regulations in terms of people re-entering Canada. Obviously, Canada is a low population country in relation to its size, and so the ability to implement social distancing and to allow people to generally live their lives without having to formally connect directly to people is probably a little easier than in some of the higher density parts of the world. Having said that, all the communities here have had to work pretty hard to get it into people's heads that social distancing is actually important. So bars, restaurants have been closed, gatherings of any significant number have been closed, but then you would find people congregating in parks and playgrounds and not translating the knowledge or the awareness that social distancing happens 24 hours a day and not just at work or when you go into the grocery store. We've been reasonably successful in moving that dial, and so people are much more aware of the way that the virus works, the way that it transmits, and there has been some reasonably a good response in that regard by the public. Cases in Canada continue to rise, and so there is continued awareness of the threat. I don't think Canadians in general understand that ultimately what Canada does is going to be significantly influenced by what the rest of the world does, and especially the US, because of flows of goods and services and inevitably people. I'm not sure that piece has sunk in yet, but in general terms, because Canada is a reasonably developed country, so far our health systems, our police systems, and our municipal systems have essentially been able to function with little disruption. Where the impact is probably going to be more significant is the severe economic impact on local businesses, and the fact that their cash flow situations are going to become very difficult. And so now we're moving into the realm of really mitigating, a financial disaster as opposed to necessarily a virus disaster, or in a sense, we're actually now dealing with both. And that's going to need to lead to some fairly radical decisions in terms of, where money is spent and where money is deferred in terms of collections. People are going to want deferrals on utility bills, on tax bills. The revenue that's coming into the municipalities is obviously going to go down significantly with closure of rec facilities, libraries, etc., and then the associated knock-on effect as it relates to employment contracts and labour. So suffice to say, this is a very complex issue. It requires consistent strategic discussion and figuring out sort of the next step. For us, good communication, clarity of purpose, keeping council informed, keeping our public informed, ensuring that we make rational and logical as opposed to emotive decisions. All of those, I think, have helped us as we've continued to work through this process. And at the moment, we really don't know what will ultimately happen. But certainly in the Canadian context, anyway, we've managed to avoid, the massive escalation in cases that have been experienced in some parts of the world. And we are lucky enough that we are not in certain parts of the world where existing healthcare systems, enforcement systems, governance systems may be less equipped to deal with the problem. It's going to be interesting what the next few weeks play out. There will be some real lessons learned. What I will say in concluding, it's just continued to reinforce the value in terms of the value that people that are invested in working for the public profession bring to the table, the leadership they bring to the table, and the commitment they bring to the table in helping citizens deal with very, very difficult situations. And my hats go off to all our staff and provincial employees, etc., that are trying to do the right thing for our citizens. Good luck with your conference. I hope you have some good lessons learned, and this little contribution is of value to you. All the best. Bye.
We are grateful to our speaker from Canada. This was the former president of ICMA, Spruce Grove, Canada, Simon Farbrozer. And now we are going to speak with Executive Director Alexander Sloboshan and Svetlana Ostashko from the Healthcare Center. Okay, do you hear us, dear colleagues? Do you hear us well? Yes, we hear you well.
Now, as to our discussion, I have a question to you. What consequences we can expect from these restrictive measures for local self-governments in a long-term and in a short-term perspective, and what steps are needed to release this pressure on local communities? Thank you for this discussion. Thank you for organization of this discussion. I believe that my statement might be useful and appealing for the audience. As of now, we have developed some suggestions how to tackle negative consequences for local budgets. We expect to have drastically bad consequences for local budgets. First of all, we expect sharp cutoff in revenues. Then second, we expect to have sharp dip in subventions from central governments, irrespectively of the measures that will be taken by the government on Saturday. We expect to have 20% cut of the revenues from subventions from the national budget. Then we expect to have sharp increase of unemployment because many small and medium-sized businesses will not be able to tackle this terrible situation. The next, we expect to have difficulties with Medicare's institutions, ambulances, regional hospitals, district hospitals in the local communities. Yesterday, we submitted materials about that to the central government, and we expect to have some amendments to the healthcare reform in the country at the local level. Then we, of course, expect a sharp cut in the educational funds which come from taxes to local governments. At the same time, we will have distance learning instead. Then we expect to have cut revenues in payments for local utilities. We suggest to exempt local utility companies from VAT payments. They do not have competition, and the president of the country mentioned this possibility at the very beginning of the preventive quarantine. And gas supply, water supply, sewage system should become part of critical infrastructure and consequently not be taxed with VAT. Then we expect to see new amendments to the legislation about local finance. We also want to see changed approach to the local public administration as an association of the cities. We submitted our suggestions to the national level. We have submitted Bill 3263. This is about possibility for local governments to introduce some privileges for local businesses which need them. Then we suggested to simplify decision-making for local governments in the area of taxation. Then we suggested to support the land owners, Chinese landowners who should get a special exemptions. This is the bill which will be reviewed on Saturday by the Parliament, and we expect it to be passed. We also have prepared amendments to the budget code, which introduce distance decision making for local self-governments. The national government has to review that suggestion and to make its final decision. This is our response to the current crisis, and this is possible solution for the post-crisis situation. We also expect that those legislative initiatives which were drafted would allow us to survive. We requested for allocation of additional finance for the health care subvention from the national level. This is that 2 billion hryvnia which had to be allocated by the central budget for the local government's development. We also suggested to allocate another 300 million hryvnia from special allocated fund for these purposes of healthcare services in local communities. And we hope that those amendments to the national budget code will be approved. We also suggested to repeal local excise duties, but actually, this repeal, cancellation of the local excise duty would mean even smaller revenues to the local budgets, and this would not work, of course. Local excise duties should not be cancelled. We obviously see demand on alcoholic goods, on gasoline, etc. That's why we encourage MPs not to support this amendment. This was about our legislative measures. We stand for cutting of VAT tax for exporters. How can we balance that tax releases on the account of National Bank? They have some reserve of 15 billion hryvnia. What also do we suggest? Not to cut down capital subventions or subventions on capital for to local communities. Why this capital subvention is important? Because this is direct source of jobs, of resources, and support for local businesses. This capital subventions, capital transfers to local communities allow us to maintain jobs and pay taxes. while subventions for social and economic development and for funding of parties, the capital subvention, the subvention for the capital development is extremely important. Why we have to retain our alcoholic goods excise duty? Because thus we again can provide jobs and ensure tax payments. The next big area of our work is informational work. We had created a special platform devoted to the anti-epidemic work in local communities, where the communities can exchange with their experience in a situation of pandemic, in the situation of coronavirus, how to organize proper work, local transport, how to organize funerals, how to organize food supplies, etc. We also have developed model plans, model decisions for local municipalities, how to act in the situation of corona crisis. Our next step is how to strengthen communication with businesses. Now, all around the country, the municipalities try to raise money from businesses, from private donors to procure necessary equipment for hospitals. And we collect existent information about producers of this medical equipment, about prices, about quality, and deliver this information to the local municipalities. The next area of our work is how to simplify procurement procedure, how to prevent speculations in the market, how to prevent abuse of market rules. And we had developed the list of goods which should be subject of simplified procurement procedure and submitted that draft to the government. In this context, I would like to mention the sales and trade of seeds. The preventive quarantine will not last forever, and we have to think about seeds, about planting and yielding the harvest, and this means practical solutions for the fourth group of taxpayers, for rural areas, for small settlements in rural areas. They can become the matter of survival. And this is briefly about the measures which are taken by our association, the work carried out by our analysts, and we expect to have a broad review of all those suggested measures at the level of the Cabinet of Ministers, line ministries, etc. that pandemic, that financial economic crisis all around the world in Ukraine coincided with the under-reformed healthcare system in Ukraine. It's very easy to take decision to stop everything and cancel everything, but we have to think carefully and to prevent a situation when from April 1st all healthcare institutions would remain without any financial support at all, according to the previously approved healthcare reform. So we have to prevent this disastrous situation. We have to extend delivery of healthcare subvention to local communities and to ensure that healthcare institutions would continue to operate. That suggestion that we submitted to the central government is based on real possibilities and real available resources. The next, in Ukraine, unlike in other countries, we will have the combination of economic crisis everywhere in the world with our local economic shortcomings. And in this situation, there is a big attempt to take resources from the pockets of local budgets. And in this situation, we only ask not to deprive us from the ways of earning money for local budgets. We also organize webinars here with the Ministry of Health and try to coordinate very technical, very practical issues which arise irrespectively of the coronavirus. Today, we also plan to have a webinar about new legislation on the rent of communal properties. Through these legislative measures, through these regulation measures, it is possible to support local businesses. With this, I would like to thank you for attention and hope that recommendations which were expressed today would be interesting for our Ukrainian and foreign partners. Thank you, Olexander, for your very general and very detailed description of what you are doing. And one more question. Donetsk and Luhansk regions are the territories of the Special Forces operation, and we may expect for the humanitarian collapse and the lack of the Ukrainian content in mass communication. How Ukrainian Association of Cities can assist here, and what can you offer to those communities which remain in the situation of coronavirus epidemic, preventive quarantine measures along the contact line?
Thank you for your question. Not only in current conditions, but for a long time we have been saying that there is no proper policy of taxation for these regions. Now they speak about exemption from land tax and income tax, and those municipalities that are at the front line, they for several years were exempt from these taxes, and the business that is working there do not pay taxes, and they cannot have proper money for social sphere. That's why the draft law that I've mentioned is important, and we've worked with some MPs, Victoria Grip, Mr. Shakif, and Ruslan Pushkin, and the municipalities at the front line. They should define what business should be exempt from taxes, not to have these gray areas. Coordination councils are being formed now. Concerning telecommunications companies, national TV and radio companies, and we see that there is lack of Ukrainian content in Sumy and Chernihiv oblasts. They spoke about it, and we have a regional department, and we provide applications for establishing of proper broadcasting, and we should influence the situation and to restore these facilities for transmitting the signal. It is important to provide proper funding for these regions. We believe that there is money in the budget for capital expenditures for these regions. Thank you very much. Thank you for your valuable comments. Please follow our broadcasting. Thank you. Now we give the floor to our colleague, expert of DOBRE program, Angela Bocci. She will speak about the influence of the quarantine on the local budgets. She has prepared a research concerning this. Welcome, Angela. Do you hear me? Yeah. I would like to sum up what was said by the previous speaker. The situation with the local budgets is really difficult, taking into account current changes, and we analyzed the figures, whether those decisions and the law of Ukraine for support of taxpayers, how the exemption from property tax and land tax influence the budgets, how this may influence budgets. The budgets of communities are vulnerable because local councils and village councils, they started recently this new budget direct relationship, and we do not know how this decentralization reform will go on. And any loss is big for local budgets. The state is always trying to compensate the losses and look into the pockets of population when the inflation grows, and only then they review the state programs. The same happened in this situation. If we are speaking about the local budgets in Ukraine, I would like to show the situation using the first slide of my presentation. Please show it on the screen. Speaking about local budgets, we've analyzed the property tax and land tax. About 2% of all budget proceeds will be lost because of these decisions. This is about 9,000 local budgets. We didn't include Kiev city because it differs from the common trend. And about the partners of Dobre USAID program, we work with 7 oblasts and we analyze the situation in those 7 oblasts. Speaking on the whole, 75 amalgamated communities in 2 months will lose 100 million hryvnias. Whether it is a lot, we will be able to say that it is a lot, actually. If we're speaking about oblasts, for example, Dnipropetrovska oblast, partner communities may lose 34.6 million. One community loses about 2 million. This is 3% of the budget without transfers. They will lose the money from their budgets. If we're speaking about Ternopil Oblast, here we have 18 communities. We're working with in Ternopil Oblast. In 2 months, they will lose about 17.8 million. This is less than Dnipropetrovska Oblast, but this is connected with the specificity of agrarian region. Drobovlyanska community will lose the most. They are actively working with the property and land tax. They have big profits, but now they will have the biggest loss. Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast. We work in this oblast with the village and city communities, and their profits are not high. Lumitska will lose the most. Next slide, the Mykolaiv Oblast. 2 biggest communities will lose the most, Vesnesenska and Bashtanska. About 3.6 million will be lost. This is agrarian region, and each community will lose about 1 million, and this is significant number. Next, Khersonska Oblast. Chaplinska community will lose about 2 million in 2 months. Next, Kirovohrad Oblast, Dmitrievska community will lose about 2 million because they have big agrarian enterprises in the territory. Kharkiv Oblast, average loss 3.1. And we are working with the 4 communities there. Speaking on the whole, this is 7.4 million that will be lost by the communities. Overall situation concerning the type of community, whether it is a city, village, or settlement council, and village councils will lose the most, and this will be 3%, and city and settlement to 2.6%. Also about the influence of quarantine on business activity, there will be influence of individual income tax. This is 50 or 60% of proceeds of the local budgets, except those communities where the industry is well developed. There will be 60 or 70% of proceeds. So local budgets won't get these proceeds, and we will think how to compensate this to local authorities. Then single tax and excise, single tax 10 or 15% in the budget of communities. There won't be big loss in this, but if physical persons, entrepreneurs will close their business, then local budget will lose. And also those who have the fuel stations in the territory of the community, and the tax for this is 6%. So if this tax is removed, there is no compensation mechanisms at the level of community. There is also a number of taxes that are minor concerning percentage, but they show overall activity. This is a communal enterprise tax, and it is small. The majority of communal enterprises, they do not have subsidies, and the communities, they provide for their communal enterprises, but they implement important social functions, including territory development. I do not know whether we will get taxes from them, but we should understand that this is an integral social component in our community. Speaking about tourism, parking, transport taxes, these taxes do not significantly influence the proceeds. They are specific for some communities. Also, there is rent and ecological payments. This is about 1% in the proceeds of the communities, and it is important to include academic and entrepreneurial activities. It should be stable because proceeds depend on this. About expenditures, we understand that the decrease of taxes will lead to the revision of the expenses, and healthcare needs more funding. They are at the front line in the fight against coronavirus, and we should help them to provide their services. There are no proper compensation mechanisms at the level of communities. 50 or 60% these are transfers, and there are communities where 80% these are transfer money. So for capital expenditures, they have little money. Everything goes for current expenditures, and we should understand that at the level of the communities, there is nothing to review, and schools are closed, and maybe there will be some saving in fuel use, but it won't influence the salaries. We should pay salaries to the teachers. What are possible opportunities how to resolve this problem? Maybe we will delay payments of taxes for property and land, and the communities will get their money from these taxes later this year. And we should review state programs, and their efficiency should be improved, because some programs, we do not know why some bodies are getting financing through these programs, and there are some reserves, and we should look at the state budget and those state programs, and we support the position concerning a social subsidy for medical sector. We see that there is no transparent mechanism for distribution of money, so we have these challenges, and we should overcome them efficiently in order that each community get the money. And yesterday, a provision was adopted concerning additional transfers for the communities, and we do not know how this money will be distributed. We cannot guarantee 100% that communities will get this money. So if situation remains, then capital expenses of communities won't be financed, and we spoke with the communities. They are ready to finance only those expenditures that are needed for social sector. These are mainly salaries. Speaking about capital expenditures, no one is able to speak about it now, and this is sad. If we are speaking about local economic development, that's why in these difficult times when we are fighting with coronavirus, we should have the support of the state for the local budgets. The state should not take away resources from the local budgets, and there should be proper stimulus created for the local communities by the state. Thank you for this wonderful and in-depth work, and we will be able to publish this report in order that all our viewers and all society be able to read your research. We and our discussion, we were able to speak about many important topics. A lot of questions remain open, and we will cover these issues in our next programs. We thank our speakers. We are grateful to our two Ukrainian associations of cities and association of territorial communities. We are grateful to Peter Ak, Managing Director, ICMA Europe, for support. And we were able to speak with the speakers from Czech Republic, Canada, and other countries, and the Polish Foundation of Development of Local Democracy, and Cesaria Dudkowska, for speakers from Poland, Krzysztof, Stanowski, International, and the Director of Support of Decentralization in Ukraine, and there is Stasmanova, expert of the project. And we thank our colleagues for bringing our colleagues from Switzerland, Sweden and Latvia. And Larissa Mudrak, our expert, and agents, USAID, and our colleagues and partners who introduced DOBRE program, International Organization, Global Community, Social Boost, and the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. And our program will be available on Facebook page of DOBRE program, and also on the media channel of Ukraine Crisis Media Center. You will be able to revisit it, and we will publish the materials with all additional materials provided by our experts, and this will be presented on DOBRE program Facebook page and the Ukraine Crisis Media Center page. Thank you.